So thank you, Presley, for that scripture. The heavens declare the glory of God. I think probably everybody in this room believes that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So you might say I'm preaching to the choir. What I would like to do, and this is dangerous, I know this, is probe this question more deeply probably than you are used to hearing, so that you will feel like you're in a science classroom. Now that worries me. My wife and I do a great deal of traveling to places like usually churches where we make presentations, and some of you have been to the Village Church in College Place. Could easily hold 1,000 people. We've been there many times to do classes. And one time, a friend from Academy that I knew well, this gal was a straight A student, and she came to listen to my lectures and watch Neva's demonstrations. And so I spoke to her afterwards about how clear it was. She said, "You lost me in the first 2 minutes." So I'm going to try real hard. I was a science teacher for many years, and I used to think I could teach something to somebody. I'm not so sure that I do that as well as I would like. But if you would be willing to work hard with me and let me know, because I will frequently ask you if it was clear or not. And well, I'm going to plumb these things more deeply than probably you've ever heard. And the reason for that is there are very astute people out there who will give you arguments as to why the earth is very old, how there's no such thing as a God, and on and on. And I want you to see what the evidence is. But it may be a little on the deep side at times. So let's work hard together. Is this on the screen behind me now? The heavens declare the glory of God. I want to look this morning principally at the heavens. It is in the context of God's creation. I actually believe that Adam and Eve had white clothing, so if you don't mind, I'll do that. The Bible doesn't say that. But the angels are all clothed with some kind of a covering of light. And by the way, isn't it strange that Jesus has clothes on and they don't? You ever thought of that? So if you don't mind, I'm going to come back to this picture later to help illustrate what I'm going to be sharing with you from the heavens. Do you all recognize this picture? It's in the heavens, and what do we call that constellation? You all know it's Orion, actually named after a pagan god. And I want to just have you take a moment to think about the star, actually the 10th brightest star in the whole night sky. That's one of his shoulders. And that star has been named Betelgeuse. It actually comes from an Arabic word that I won't try to pronounce, although it's close to Betelgeuse. It means the giant's shoulder. It turns out it's quite a large star. I want to compare it for you with our own sun. You can barely see that Betelgeuse is curved. Are you all with me on that? So you can picture that it's very, very, very large in comparison to our sun. Isn't that amazing? Now, Betelgeuse isn't the largest star. It's one of the largest stars in our galaxy. And let me show you the comparison. There's the star smaller on our screen, And here's our sun. Let's put the sun in the middle of that star, and let me show you where the Earth would be orbiting. You all understand that our Earth orbits the sun, don't you? It's held in orbit by gravity. You all understand that idea. It's kind of like an invisible string that keeps various heavenly bodies, we say, orbiting. They don't orbit in a circle. They actually orbit in an ellipse. But nevertheless, you and I are familiar with that idea. Let's put the Earth, it's 93 million miles. That's how far it is from us to the sun. Let's put the Earth 93 million miles from the center of this star. Do you see it there? It's way too big. I made it big enough for you to see. It would be a dot so tiny in this picture you couldn't see it. But that's where it is. So if Betelgeuse was our star, our Earth would be orbiting inside the star. What would happen to us? Yeah, it would all be over in a moment, wouldn't it? So actually our star is a rather small star. Even though it heats us from 93 million miles away. It's astonishing how that works. Betelgeuse isn't the biggest star. There are others even larger than Antares. And again, here is one of the really larger stars. Again, if you can catch this feeling, in the upper left corner, maybe I could even draw. That isn't as bright as my screen is, but I guess it is what it is. If I could draw that sun, it would be, or that star. Y'all with me on the idea? And you can see how big our sun is in comparison. It's hard, and this is the proper ratio. It's a dot in comparison. Well, you are all familiar with Orion's belt, aren't you? And then his sword, made up of 3 stars. Many of you probably know that the middle star is not a star. It's what scientists like to call a nebula. In fact, in the early days of astronomy, not that long ago, about 100 years ago, with very weak telescopes, astronomers could see places in the sky where it was kind of a smudge of light, and they called it a nebula. Actually, it was sometimes an exploded star. In this case, this is the photograph from the Hubble telescope. You're all familiar with the Hubble telescope. It's probably one of the most glorious places. I should say it is the most glorious place that we can see in our galaxy. Scientists are completely puzzled where all this light is coming from. This thing is 1,500 light years from us. Most of you know what a light year is, but we're going to use this term. Do you know that when a little bit of light leaves our sun, does anybody in this room have any idea how long it takes for that light to get to us? Somebody want to hazard a guess, or do you know? About 6 minutes. So we would say the sun is 6 minute years away. It takes 6 minutes. 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Oh well, 6 minutes. I'm getting it wrong. We say light year. 6 minute away. How many of you are familiar with the fact that in 2015 a large, probably about the size of that grand piano, interspace piece of equipment was sent to Pluto? How many of you remember that? Not too many. That's amazing. Those of you that didn't raise your hand, do you know what Pluto is? It's the farthest planet from the sun. Actually, there's a whole string of planets a few million planets orbiting farther out. There's a name for that. But anyway, the scientists were communicating with the computers. They named this instrument New Horizons. And it blasted off, and it took 10 years almost to get there. And when it was finally at Pluto, if they would send the computer a message, it would take 4 hours for the radio signal from Earth, 2 hours, to reach the machine. And then the machine would reply, and how long would it take for that to come back? 2 more hours. So it's amazing the distances. How far away is this picture from us? 1,500 light years. A small distance when you speak of galactic scale, but this brilliant light is somehow, scientists do not know what's causing all that light. They think there's a lot of stars being made in there. They believe that. But notice what Ellen White says about this. She says, the atmosphere parted and rolled back when we could look up through the open space in Orion, whence came the voice of God. The holy city will come down through that open space. Now, let me give you a little advance here. We'll come to this in a minute. I think all of you know, you all know the term Milky Way. You get out at a real dark night and you can see this stream of light. How many of you have ever looked at that stream of light up there through a telescope? Can I see your hands? One, hold them up. I want to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That stream of light, when you look at it through even a fairly small telescope, you realize it's just hundreds of millions of stars. But when your eye can't resolve any one of them, it just looks like a patch of light up there. The average galaxy in our universe, and so we call this thing a galaxy, and I'll show you some pictures of some of them. The average galaxy in our universe has 1 to 200 billion stars. In the beginning, God created the what? We don't know, folks. I'll tell you what my opinion is. I think God has been creating stars and galaxies for billions of years. I don't think he sat around for billions of years, because some churches teach that 6,000 years ago is when he made the earth and all the stars and everything. You all with me on that idea? There are some people that believe that. It could be. I think we should be careful about forming opinions, because when we get to heaven, we may be surprised what we learn. Is that right? But I believe that God has been creating galaxies and stars for billions of years. And the Bible teaches this. It says this in the book of Hebrews. It speaks about the worlds that are upheld by the power of Jesus. And Ellen White speaks of this. She says that every single world in the, she's actually speaking of the universe, but she may be speaking of our own galaxy, they also had a tree of life. Did you know that? She says there was a tree of knowledge of good and evil on every one of these worlds. And all of them managed to follow God's plan, except this place. It's interesting. We don't find that information in the Bible, but Ellen White makes that clear. She said, I saw that the powers of earth are now being shaken and that events come in order. War and rumors of war. You know, most of us are about the age, that those of us who are older, that I was born in 1943. I'll bet that 80% of you were born since then. Is that right? And some of you real old folks were born a little earlier than that. But We haven't, most of us haven't had that much personal experience with war, have we? But the rumors are there, and our dear people, of course, in Ukraine. My wife and I have worked in the Soviet Union several times in several places, and our hearts go out to those people. But the Bible says that war and rumors of war, sword, famine, and pestilence are first to shake the powers of earth. Then the voice of God will shake the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the earth also. So there are some very powerful things to come that looking at these things make us think about his power. The heavens declare his glory. Now, when scientists look through their telescopes at other galaxies, and by the way, I'll show you a picture of this in a moment. There is a galaxy, and only one, that you can see with your naked eye. Anybody know what the name of it is, by any chance? Yes. The Andromeda Galaxy, if you know where to look. In fact, you can't see it when you look at it. You have to know where to look, and then you look to the side a little bit, because, interestingly enough, it's not the center of your vision that has the best ability to see dim things. So if you look a little bit to the side, then you can see the galaxy as a little hazy patch. I've looked at it many times through my own telescope, and other telescopes for that matter. And here's what scientists have found. In fact, the man who found this was Mr. Hubble. He was using the 200-inch telescope on Mount Palomar. Anybody ever been there? Oh, look, hold those hands up. Let me see who's been there. That's wonderful. He noticed something about the galaxies, and he became famous for this discovery. Except for a few galaxies that are close to us, all the galaxies he looked at, and many since others have, this is the case, they are all flying away from us. Did you know that? You know it now. What did she say? As they should. What does that tell you about our position in the universe? Don't laugh. It's true. Are you all with me on this? Every galaxy, with exception of a few around us, there's actually one that we may run into. They claim, the scientists believe that we're going to run into Andromeda in about, I don't remember what it is, about 5 million years or something. All of them are going away. Now here's my point. If when Jesus comes the second time back to this earth, if he comes through the open space in Orion, and we're not sure what Ellen White, just where she meant, I kind of think, folks, that that brilliant light is not coming from a bunch of stars. I think it's coming from the kingdom. And since we are in the area of the middle of the universe, he wouldn't go clear across the universe to come through a certain spot to see us. That's where he is now. Are y'all with me on that idea? That's just my own opinion, but interesting enough. This is the Andromeda Galaxy that you can see with your naked eye, if you will. It's about, I think the number is 10 times the size of our galaxy, the closest one to us. And many years ago, scientists began to track some large stars in that galaxy. There's one of them, and they began to track their path and found that the star was orbiting in the galaxy, kind of orbiting the center of the galaxy. You all with me on the idea? Much like our Earth orbits the sun. To their astonishment, Now, this may seem strange to you, but scientists have the ability to estimate how much the galaxy weighs, or what its mass is would be a better term. To their amazement, there wasn't enough gravity, or mass, if you will, to catch the star and make it orbit. I think you would know this intuitively, but let me make sure you understand that the heavier some object is, the larger the gravity with some other object. You kind of know this if you hold, let's say, a marble in your hand, and you can feel the weight of it in comparison to a more massive object, like, say, a bucket of water or something. That water is heavier because gravity is pulling harder on it. Y'all with me on that? So the bigger the mass, the more mass there is, the more gravity there will be. And the idea is, scientists they couldn't believe it. There wasn't enough gravity to keep that star orbiting in the galaxy. What the star should do, because there's not enough pull, the star should fly off. Y'all with me? And the scientists are scratching their heads saying, this is crazy. And enough scientists looked at this so they all recognized that this was happening. So here's their explanation. There must be some mass in there that they didn't know about. And so they named this many galaxies have been studying. And here's what they have found. They lack about 95% of the mass needed to make these stars orbit. Are you following me? Not heavy enough, see? So they said, there's got to be some more stuff in there to do the pulling. And you know what they called it? Dark matter. In other words, there's got to be something in there and you can't see it. I'll tell you what I think it is. I think it's God's hand. Now, there's another problem that scientists have only discovered in the last several years. We've known since Hubble, maybe 80 years ago, a little more than that Hubble did this work. We've known that the galaxies are going away. Y'all with me? From us. What has only been known for several years, and there are two different scientific efforts using different approaches that found this same result. The galaxies are speeding up as they go away. Huh? So the scientists are scratching their heads saying, what's going on? Actually, I remember as a child reading in Life magazine about the Big Crunch. Anybody ever heard of the Big Crunch? Let me see your hands. Some are listening with their eyes closed, and it's really hard to keep up with me on that. But maybe you're just concentrating, huh? Nobody's heard of the Big Crunch? The idea is that these galaxies are moving away, and gravity from all of them on each other would make them slow down and stop and start falling back, and someday they'd all come together into a big crunch. Are y'all with me on the idea? And in fact, the idea that there was this Big Bang. How many have heard the term Big Bang? Okay. You understand what the idea is, and I'll speak about it more in a minute. The idea is that there was nothing. And then an explosion happened that created all this matter, which became planets and stars and all of that. It's a crazy idea, folks. Something from nothing. Y'all with me on this? There was nothing, and then somehow an explosion occurred that would create all this matter. So their thinking was, well, that's why the galaxies are going away, because this explosion made them, and they're traveling away. And someday they'll come back. But all the scientists today agree. All of them agree this work that was done is widely accepted. The galaxies are speeding up. They're getting faster and faster in their travel. So the scientists who don't believe in God, they have to figure something out. And so they said, okay, here's what it is. In fact, I didn't even put it on the screen. It's dark energy. There's something out there pulling on the galaxies to make them go faster. Who do you think's pulling? I think it's God. I don't know why he's doing it this way, but it's interesting to me. And the scientists are trying so hard to find some of this dark matter, and it just never works. They can't find it. They can't find it because it's not there. They have the wrong explanation. Now, this Andromeda Galaxy is called, there are various catalogs named after some astronomer, and one of the catalogs is quite popular that just numbers all these heavenly bodies with the first letter of his name. So, there's a little companion galaxy there, and this is a picture, a drawing really, of the galaxies that are near us. Near needs to be in quotes. There's the Milky Way, that's us. Are y'all with me on that? And there's M31 or Andromeda nearby. Notice the scale here. 10 million light years. Y'all with me? By the way, Andromeda is about 2.5 million light years away from us. You can't even imagine that number, but you get the idea. It's an awfully far distance, right? How long would it... Let's say a star exploded, which happens frequently, in the Andromeda Galaxy. How long would it take for us to see that explosion? 2.5 million years. Do you understand what I'm saying, friends? That's how far away that place is. Because we're talking about the speed of light, are we not? And the closest galaxy to us is far enough away that when something happens there, a light of some sort, an explosion, or we wouldn't see it for 2.5 million years. It's astonishing. But the scale on the bottom of this blue circle is, yeah, you can see that. 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, 50 million light years. And this is called the local cluster. Galaxies tend to occur in clusters. And you might say, what do you mean local? They're 100 million light years away. I have looked at almost all of these galaxies with my own telescope. And many of them are so dim you can just barely, oh yeah, okay, even with a telescope, I can just barely see that they're there. So it's an amazing thing that God has done, folks. And I don't know if this is the place to do this. I don't have slides on this. Are you aware that when an atomic bomb explodes, what actually happens is some matter got turned into energy? Are you aware of that? You're not nodding. Some of you have just nodded once. So stay with me, folks, please. It's going to get deeper than this, so I got to keep you going. This is Einstein's equation. Energy equals mc squared. M is the mass, c is the speed of light. So you get, it doesn't take very much mass to give you an awful lot of energy when you convert the mass into energy. And scientists figured out how to do that. It took about 20 physicists working for a number of years at Los Alamos, and they actually figured out how to make some matter turn to energy. Listen to this carefully. The bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, you'd have to take a pencil eraser and cut it in 10 pieces. And one of those pieces is how much mass got converted into energy when that bomb exploded. So when you take energy, when you take mass and turn it into energy, it is almost unbelievable, folks, what's happened. And God can do this by speaking. I'll talk to you more about the Big Bang in a few minutes if I have time. Have you ever seen the license plate that says, I believe in the Big Bang? Now I can't remember how it goes. God said it and bang, it happened. I won't be surprised if when we get to heaven he says, yeah, that's how I did it. And that's why everything is going. Now, why it's going faster, we'd have to ask him. You understand they're speeding up. You all with me on that? So it's going to be fun to go. And when you get to heaven, you're not going to be as dumb as you are today. and me too. You understand that? And Jesus will be I taught physics for years. Jesus will be the physics teacher, and we'll just understand it perfectly.
I've heard that quarks contain a sound wave.
Well, quarks are another world we won't get into here, but actually, I won't go there. How many of you are aware of a new telescope that was launched about, 3 months ago? The James Webb? This is a photograph taken already by the James Webb telescope of a galaxy. Just a little bit of information there. Now, the Hubble telescope was pointed several years ago at a piece of sky, a piece of the night sky, that would be about the size of a pinhead at the end of your arm. Is that a pretty tiny spot? Yeah. And the telescope, the lens was opened. I think you know what I mean by that. Let light come in for 11 days on just that one spot. And I'll show you about where that spot was. It's just below Orion. And all you could see there with any telescope we've had so far is just several stars. It was like there's nothing there. Many of you have heard something about this. After these 11 days of looking at that tiny spot, about the size of the head of a pin at arm's length, and there were only several stars, they had a picture of what has been called the ultra deep field, and that's the square, or the circle, if you wish, in the square. And you can see, what are there, 3 or 4 stars. That's all you could see with the telescope. But after those 11 days, this is what they saw. Every smudge of light, even the tiniest tiny dot, and I can see them better on my computer screen than you probably can, some of the tiny, every one of those things is a galaxy. And with a microscope, they have looked at this and found, and by the way, some of them are easy to see that they're galaxies. There's one that you can see on the edge. Are y'all with me on that? And even a little tiny dot, folks, is another galaxy with about 100 to 200 billion stars. And they found, after examining this closely, that there were 10,000 galaxies in this picture. Looking through a space the size of what? The head of a pin. This is astonishing, folks. And it turns out that you can put that head of a pin anywhere, and guess what's behind it? Another 10,000 galaxies. It's astonishing what the Creator has done. Now I'm going to do something here that I hope can make sense to you. The diameter of a pinhead, about 5/100ths of an inch. And half of that is the radius. Don't most of you know that the radius is half the diameter? Okay. Because there's a formula that gives you the area. If you multiply this thing we call pi times the radius squared, this is the formula right here. The area of that pinhead is this funny number that they use a Greek letter, and the radius squared, or that number times r times r. Are y'all with me on that? That works for any circle. You want the area of a circle, then you just measure, half the circle's width, multiply it by 3.14, that's pi, and times that again. And just for fun, I want to show you something, if we can manage to do this together. So there's the multiplying thing. Y'all with me on this? I'm going to multiply these three things together. And that's how many square inches is on the head of a pin. 2/100ths of a square inch. So you could put about 50 pins, and it would make a square inch. That's the idea there. And let me have you imagine with me. Now, this is a little tough for you, but I think you can do this. Let's say my arm is 30 inches long, 10, 20, 30. And I'm holding this pin out there. And if it was a little circle, and the telescope was looking through the circle, how many galaxies would it see? 10,000. And if I moved it just a smidgens, what would the telescope see? Another 10,000. So what I would like to know is how many pinheads would there be picture yourself inside of a ball that has the radius from my shoulder to my fingertip, right? And I want to see how many pinheads fit on the inside of that ball. Does that make sense? Because I would like to know what? How many galaxies are out there? Are y'all with me? How many are confused already, like my friend from... Okay. Would you be willing to ask me a question to help straighten it out? Huh? I would rather you talk to me. Okay, so let me show you the mathematics for that. I used to be a math teacher. I want the surface of the inside of this sphere, right? And I want to see how many pinheads would fit on it, correct? Y'all with me on that? The formula for that, for the surface of a ball, on the outside or inside is the same thing, is 4 pi r squared. That's the formula. And let's put the numbers in. There's 4, there's pi, and there's 30 inches times 30 inches. Are y'all with me? Okay. And you get 11,000 square inches, about, in this ball the size of the radius of my arm. Y'all with me still? And let's see how many pinheads would fit there, right? So if this makes sense to you, if I divide the size of the pinhead area into the whole area, then I would have how many would fit there. Isn't that right? That makes sense? Yeah. So let's do that, just for fun. Divide the pinhead area into the sphere area. Inside the area of the large ball is 11,000 square inches, divided by 0.02, the area of a pinhead. Y'all with me on this? Which gives me 5,760,000 pinheads, through which anyone I look would find how many galaxies? So if I multiply this number times 10,000, I will approximate how many galaxies Jesus made. Are y'all with me? Each one of them having how many stars? 100 to 200 billion stars. This is amazing, folks. Are you aware of the fact that starting only about 20 years ago, scientists figured out how to tell if a star somewhere had a planet orbiting it? How many of you are aware that that has been something that's been being pursued? 3 hands. You all know it now. And the way they did that, and they have a telescope up in space that looks at a star and measures its intensity constantly. And every once in a while, the intensity dims just a little bit and then comes back. And they found out that they could tell there was a planet orbiting in front of that sun. And every time the little tiny planet went by, a tiny difference in this intensity of the star could be measured. And they just rejoiced that they had found a planet around another star. They now have found thousands of planets around other stars. And what do you suppose they're after? They want to find another planet where maybe life could happen, right? I think they're barking up the wrong planet. I mean the wrong tree. But in any case, let's multiply those two numbers together. And what you get is 57 billion galaxies. Actually, scientists think that's way underestimated. They actually think that there probably are 1 trillion galaxies. But anyway, in that picture, there's 10,000. Let me show you, I think it's, what I'm trying to picture here is that the box I showed you through which this telescope was looking for these galaxies, those galaxies are not all on one flat surface, are they? They're spread out. And they actually took the brightness of these galaxies and made this drawing to show you where they are spread out. You got that? Amazing. Now here's the deal. This box where you and I are taking the picture from, this represents 13.7 billion light years. And they actually think there's a lot more galaxies past that. So we're in an area of finding out a lot of things. And here's the issue, folks. I hope I can make this have sense to you. I actually listened to a scientist the other day, and I'm sorry for this sidetrack. Because of this kind of thing and other things that I'll be sharing with you in the next two presentations when we're going to be discussing creation and evolution issues, more and more scientists have decided that there had to be a creator. It's astonishing. Most of them have to stay in the closet because they would lose their positions as professors. It's the cancel culture. Long before the cancel culture we know today, folks, professors, some of my professors, I graduated from college 56 years ago. Phew, how can you be that old? I was looking in the mirror yesterday and I thought, this is awful. But anyway, they are coming to grips with the fact that there could not have been an explosion from nothing. There's actually, the man I was listening to that I was talking to you about, he has written a book called Something from Nothing. That's about the dumbest thing you could ever say. I mean, if there's nothing there, there's nothing there. How could you have an explosion? You understand, folks? If it takes a Hiroshima bomb energy to make 1/10 of a pencil eraser mass, y'all with me on this? If you're going to convert energy into mass, y'all with me on this? Give me a break. Even making the mass of a chair would be an explosion of unbelievable proportions. Are y'all with me on that? Scientists can do this. In the nuclear reactor, they can change mass into energy and vice versa. And when they built a bomb, are they converting mass into energy? Yes. So, they learned how to do this to a degree. But you just imagine, and it's way beyond what you and I can imagine, but with these numbers we've been fooling with here for a few minutes, how are you going to create all that mass with an explosion that occurred from nothing? Are y'all with me on this? And the scientists are just saying to themselves, there is no way. But they doggedly do not want to believe in a God. You know why they don't want to believe in a God? They'll never tell you this. If you actually decided to believe that there was an entity that could make stuff, if you're a moral person, you would recognize that you have some responsibility to that person. Is that not correct? When my mother gave birth to me and I began to grow up, do I have some responsibility to that person? Of course. And this is changing the world, folks, in the scientific community. But as I say, many of them just can't afford to share that. You don't. Do you guys have a pen you could write something down on your bulletin? And I'll do this again tomorrow night in case you don't have a pen. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 names of scientists that I'd like you to get on YouTube and listen to. And one of them, for those of you that have a pen, his name is James Tour, like a tour bus. Anybody in this room besides Mrs. Brackett, this poor woman, guess what she has to listen to every day at lunch? Can you imagine? Have any of you listened to any of James Tour? Can I see a hand? Well, good for you. Anyway, James Tour is a Jew. It's not fair, folks. Jewish people are smarter than you and me. God bless those people, and it's still with them. He is the lead. He's considered to be the leading organic chemist in the world. Actually, what they call themselves is synthetic organic chemists. What that means is they make molecules that didn't exist before. They take a hydrogen and a carbon and a few other things and make something that's not in nature. And he is going to get the Nobel Prize for the work that he's done. And he became a believer when he was in college. And he is as bold as they get. He's a missionary. Every week, he has about 30, I'm digressing, he has about 30 PhDs and what we call postdocs. Do you know what a postdoc is? They already have a PhD, but they're going to do some additional study under some professor. He has about 30 of these PhD candidates, young men and women who are on their way to get their PhD in organic chemistry, and a bunch of them are also postdocs. They already have a PhD in organic chemistry, but they realize that working with James Tour, they have a lot that they could learn. And this whole team is being guided by Jim in making stuff. It's really cool. They actually have made a nano car. You know what nano means? It's a point with 9 zeros before you put a 1 there. Is that a tiny number? So that's the size of, in the nano world, that's kind of the size of things. And these nano cars are 4-wheel drive, and they have an engine that when you shine light on them, it starts spinning the wheels. And these nano cars are tiny enough that you could put, I think it's 20,000 of them, side by side across the width of a human hair. And you say, what use is that? No use. It's just once in a while when you're doing scientific studies, you play around a little bit, right? And you make stuff that's just for fun, right? Jim Tour. Now here's the beautiful thing. If you will write this under his name, Science and Faith Broadcast. He interviews Nobel laureates. You know what I mean by that, don't you? He interviews female, male and female, Nobel laureates who have become believers in Jesus Christ. It is absolutely beautiful and astonishing. And these people are bold for Christ. It's wonderful. You'll never see this in the news. But on YouTube today, you know how it is. You just type in there Jim Tour, Faith and Science Podcast, or even less than that. Even when you misspell stuff, Google fixes it for you, doesn't it? Yeah, okay. So that's what poor Neva has to listen to when we have lunch. Okay. Yes, sweetheart. dear, don't tell me you're lost. Oh, yeah. When we're watching Jim Tour, I keep stopping him and I explain to her what he means.
But I still love to listen to him because he's so animated, just like you. You know, it's like
He's excited about Jesus Christ. He really is. He just is excited about Jesus Christ. It's wonderful. But yeah, he's a little tough to listen to, but you'll still get some of it. And the testimony. You know, the first question he asks the Nobel laureate on this little podcast, right? The very first question he says to them, you're an intelligent person. How in the world could you believe that Jesus Christ died and was resurrected? Now, you understand Jim believes that, but he wants to hear the testimony of this next scientist, see? And it's beautiful to hear their answers. And one of the answers goes something like this. 12 men wouldn't have gone out and happily sacrificed their lives if it was a ruse. Are y'all with me on this? They had no problem giving up their life for this cause. And the cause was entirely based on the resurrection of Jesus Christ, wasn't it? It's beautiful. It's just beautiful. But it's interesting to hear their answers. You know, they all have a different flavor of the way to describe how come they believe in something as radical as the resurrection of somebody from the dead. Okay. So maybe a trillion galaxies. Just for fun, a stack of $1 trillion bills would be 63,000 miles tall. And that stack, if you wanted to, would wrap around the earth about 3 times. Now, here is a really interesting thing. I think I'm going past my time, but none of you is asleep right now, so I'm going to keep going. There was a couple people that were at the beginning. In 1965, there was a wide belief among astronomers that the universe had always existed. This was their approach. I'm sure you'll get this. If the universe had a beginning, then it had to have a beginner. So in order to stay away from any supernatural power, they just said, it's always been here. You get the idea? That was their way around. And a scientist from Bell Labs built this contraption. It's actually an antenna, metal, because earlier than this, it's an interesting story. I'm just going to tell you very quickly. By accident, a scientist found that there was radio signals coming from some stars. Actually, they're coming from what we would call a quasar, but anyway, coming from a star. Radio signals, just like no information, no music or talking, but just an electromagnetic wave. You all with me on that? And this scientist built this big antenna to try to identify where these things were coming from. The bigger your dish, the more accurate a spot you can define. Would that make some sense? You see these great big dishes out there? They're trying to get as accurate a spot as they can in what they're looking at. So he built this big antenna, and his name was Wilson, and they hooked it up, and it had static in it. And they kept working on the electronics. There was kind of a buzz. You ever have a buzz in a radio that you turned on? They were trying to fix the electronics so they could listen for the radio signals, and it dawned on them one day that that was a radio signal. He discovered microwaves. You all know about microwaves. You have a little box at home that makes them, right? He discovered that microwaves were coming from everywhere. Not from a star or a quasar, just everywhere. And he got the Nobel Prize for this. And here's what's going on. In their belief, that the universe was created by an explosion, there was a lot of heat. Right? And the explosion was recent enough, 13.7 billion years, was recent enough so there was still heat traveling all over the universe. It's like driving by a bonfire in your car with the window up. Have you ever had the experience where you feel the heat through the window? Haven't you all had that? Even if you're just standing by a fire, you feel heat. It's infrared radiation. Are you all with me? And infrared wavelengths are tiny, but as you get them longer and longer, we start calling them microwaves. This is the same stuff. So this man discovered the cosmic, which means the cosmos, the cosmic microwave background. No matter where you pointed this antenna, it was there. And this is the conclusion. And this was very hard for the scientists to accept. The conclusion was that the universe was created by this Big Bang, and it showed you if the universe was here forever, there would be no heat left. The bonfire went out. Are you all with me on this? So the cosmic microwave background proved that the universe had a beginning. Every scientist out there will say, yeah, it did. Are you all with me on this? Is this monumental? What is monumental about it? If it had a beginning, somebody had to begin it. It's powerful, folks. It's powerful. It's beautiful. Every one of them believes the universe had a beginning, and their excuse is, well, there was this explosion. From nothing. It's ludicrous, folks, to the extent that people will go to keep from acknowledging that there is a creator. Amazing. It's amazing and wonderful. There had been some consideration of a Big Bang. People actually thought about that before this, ever since Hubble had discovered that the galaxies were moving away from us. You all with me on that connection? Hubble had discovered the galaxies are moving away. Later, we found out they're moving away faster and faster. Well, anyway, I told you that story about the hiss. This is just a graph of the brighter it is, the more of those microwaves are coming at you. It's everywhere in the universe. Everywhere you look, it's coming at you. Again, it shows that there was a beginning. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. I'm going to go back to my picture of Adam and Eve. I'm going to have to do it by hand, which won't take but a second. I thought I included it there again, but I must not have pressed Control-S, and it got left. So here we are. I want to tell you a quick story, and this will be the end, about Adam and Eve. Let me just play it here. And I'm going to have you imagine with me that you're standing there as God makes this mud pie that looks like a man. I use that word very loosely. I actually think, friends, that God created every cell in every muscle, every cell in every organ, but the cells were not living. Y'all with me? And then what is God going to do? What is Jesus going to do? He's going to breathe in. The Bible calls it the breath of life. And supposing you're standing there and you see what Jesus is about to do, and you say, Lord, could I blow in there? Sure. And you kneel down and you blow air into Adam's mouth, and what happens? Nothing. Here's the interesting story, friends. Scientists today are trying to build a cell. They're having a terrible time doing it. And we're going to look at this kind of thing tomorrow night. And they believe that if they can get all the chemicals and all the structures in there and get the envelope made of the lipid bilayer, some of you know about that, they think that the cell would be alive. If they can get all the concentrations of the right chemicals and structures, that the cell would suddenly be alive. I don't think that's the case. I think that every single cell in my body and yours is being kept alive by divine power all the time. Yes, dear, go ahead. And what? Well, sure. But God, listen to this, friends. It's not just God's power that he puts in there and walks off. I think it's his presence. You think about that. It's profound, isn't it? Let's pray. Father, I thank you for this beautiful plan you have in creating the universe. And soon we will be with you and be able to travel to these places, and you'll take us there and show us things. And what a day that will be. I love that song. Oh, what a day that will be. I pray your blessing, Lord, upon all of us. We want to be faithful. We especially, Lord, want to have you give us the ability to speak a word in season to him that is weary, and have other people come to understand your love and choose to be believers and followers. Bless this church family, Lord, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, I think we're supposed to